At Two Men and a Truck, we'll treat you and your belongings like we'd treat our own grandmas.
Here we go!
Hi, hello there. Welcome.
Whether we're moving you across town or even across the country.
Ooh ee ooh ah ah ting tang walla walla bang bang. Ooh ee ooh ah ah ting tang walla walla bang bang. Ooh ee ooh ah ah ting tang walla walla bang bang. Ooh ee ooh ah ah ting tang walla walla bang bang. Do 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 do.
Huh? Several months later.
Damn, boy. Damn, boy, he's thick.
To get the range.
3 weeks later.
Don't leave yourself open. Get yourself some muscles first. Man, you're an embarrassment. Get yourself some muscles first. Come on, man. Thank you.
It was at this moment Jackson knew. He
Just a bitch.
my love is fair. Yes.
Pokemon trading card game Pokemon Go expansion. Available now.
Scotiabank's preferred package has unique rewards for unique people like Nina. With an annual card fee waiver for the first year, she's...
Greetings, folks, and today's LGR episode orbits all around the Saturn, in particular the Victor V Saturn, model RGJX1. A Japan-exclusive variant of the Sega Saturn sold by Victor Company of Japan, also known as JVC, which is a fascinating thing on its own. However, in lieu of the usual optical drive, this one doesn't have one. Instead, it's fitted with an optical drive emulator, or ODE. With this installed, there's no need for original Saturn discs, and I can load my collection of games for the system straight off of a microSD card. Yeah, this is something I've wanted to mess around with ever since the community began making them several years back, especially for the Saturn, a console where it was hard to break the copy protection for a very long time, and I've always found the system somewhat mystical, mysterious, magic? I don't know, I'm not quite finding the right words, but when I was a kid, the system was always appealing, yet constantly out of reach. I never knew anyone that owned one. Friends and family either got a PlayStation or a Nintendo 64 that generation. I barely even remember seeing any in-store demo units. I think the local KB Toys was the only place that had one. What I more vividly remember are the big wire bins full of unsold Saturn games on clearance they had near the front of the store in 1997 to early 98. And of course, occasionally being able to buy Sega Saturn PC ports that I could play on Windows 95. So really, the most exposure I got to actual Saturn games came from screenshots printed in various magazines, or in stores that sold or rented video games, like the local Farmore. I specifically remember every single Saturn game they had was cracked, broken, and held together with gobs of Scotch tape. Those cases sucked. Impact Racing was a real favorite to admire while my mom was doing her shopping. Look at that wild laser-firing Dodge Viper on the cover. And hey, JVC was the publisher, what do you know? That brings us back around to the Victor V Saturn, which I received thanks to an LGR viewer named John, who offered to trade it to me for a PC game that I had. I rarely do trades, but this was a no-brainer since it wasn't a game I was attached to, and for years I've wanted both a V Saturn and an ODE to mess around with. As for why I wanted a V Saturn, I mean, I don't know, why not? It's neat. It has a different gray color scheme than Sega's Model 1, actually in 2 shades of gray, top and bottom. Coincidentally, the name of a best-selling romance novel. And the controllers were Victor branded as well, matching the color scheme nicely. Though all I have are these vanilla Japanese Saturn gamepads for now, since I didn't get any with the console. And yeah, I've had a few Saturns over the years, but they've all been later US releases, so the earlier Japanese versions are currently more appealing to me. And the V Saturn doubly so, for its slight weirdness. It was released in Japan on November 22nd, 1994, which, yep, that's the same launch day as Sega's own Saturn. It sold right alongside it at the same 44,800 yen price tag too, as far as I can tell. Yeah, Sega in Japan was going through some stuff in the early to mid-90s, trying desperately to nab a larger slice of the game console market and licensing their designs to various companies as a result. Such as Victor, who'd produced the Wonder Mega console in 1992, eventually released as the JVC Xi here in the US. It was a Sega Mega Drive/Genesis combined with a CD unit in one console, marketed to more of a tech enthusiast's multimedia-oriented consumer. And they took a similar approach with the Victor V Saturn, as implied by the multi-amusement player text printed on the lid. Early marketing in particular made a big deal about how great the system was for anyone into CD-based entertainment, audio CDs, CD plus G karaoke CDs, photo CDs, and video CDs. Provided, that is, that you purchased the optional VCD MPEG-1 expansion, which oddly enough wasn't included by Victor, just the usual empty expansion bay housing nothing but the clock battery. Yeah, for all the multimedia-centered marketing you'd think there'd be something setting this apart in terms of hardware, but nope. It's a differently badged Saturn with no Sega logos in sight, and that's about it. The hardware is identical. It plays all the same games, uses the same peripherals, supports the same RAM cartridges, which I can't find mine right now, but this supports them, I swear. Really, the only thing that's different in terms of operation is the BIOS, which boots up to show a V Saturn logo instead of the usual Saturn stuff. And unlike the case, this does say Sega. Finally, some credit where credit's due. Speaking of credit, allow me to shout out Adam Korlick for his video on the V Saturn, which proved quite helpful in learning about this system. Check it out for much more detail and context regarding Sega, Victor, and V Saturn variants. It's fascinating stuff. As for my particular console here, it's a Model 1 V Saturn with the usual oval power and reset buttons, same as the OG Saturn from Sega. But I gather this is a slightly less common version in that it's a Model 1 with the Access LED, but also a 21-pin optical drive connector. Apparently most of these use a 20-pin connector, but not this one, which came with an EXL P604 drive more typically found on Model 2 consoles. So I assume this is a later Model 1 V Saturn then, considering the parts used in the relatively high serial number. This seems like useless trivia, and it normally is, but in this case, it's necessary, since the whole laser assembly is going by the wayside in favor of an optical drive emulator. And those typically come in two versions, 20 and 21 pin, depending on your console. A vital consideration when choosing an ODE, and there are plenty to pick from for the Saturn alone, like the Phoebe, Rhea, Mode, Satiator, and Fenrir. With that last one being chosen by John when he sent the system to me, apparently due to ease of use when switching games on the SD card. I don't know, this is the only ODE I've ever used, so I'm just happy to have one at all. And with that, let's set it up with a neat little CRT TV and test out the hardware with some classic Sega Saturn games. V Saturn, how exciting! I rather enjoy that customized startup screen. And from here it goes straight into the Fenrir menu system, since I've already gotten it set up. Pressing start brings up some options, beginning with one that enables cover art, alongside each game being selected, providing you source and place the cover images in each folder yourself. Return to menu enables soft resetting to return to this menu, which is the standard ABC plus start on the controller. That combo normally just resets the game itself, but pressing it again here will bring you back to the ODE menu, a necessity since the hardware reset button on the console annoyingly doesn't do that. You can also back up and restore save files to and from the microSD card, very handy. Oh, and I meant to mention I don't have a 3D printed insert yet, but it can really use one since it's entirely too easy to drop the microSD card in there and have it flopping around inside. Made that mistake a couple times already. And I also meant to mention earlier, this system is FRAM modded, meaning that even if the clock battery dies, your save data will survive, so you can swap the CR2032 without losing anything. You can also see some more information about the system, including some future abilities like Wi-Fi that may become available, but for the moment, what we've got here with firmware 1.5.5 is a pretty standard game selection system. Much like you may have seen on any number of other SD card or flash cart solutions, I approve of its simplicity. And again, you can add cover art too, if you like. Now, in terms of the games on here, while it supports up to 2,499 games overall, this is just my own personal Saturn collection, all stuff that I own physically. Yeah, most of the games I own for the system are imports, since there's such a cool library of stuff released in Japan that we either never got in the US, or if we did, those games are more rare and expensive here compared to the Japanese releases. Or at least that's how it was when I was buying these 7 or 8 years ago online. Perhaps it's changed these days, but typically Japanese games have been more reasonably available. Anyway, let's begin with the obvious choice here, Duke Nukem 3D. which loads up at an authentic feeling and, by extension, unimpressive rate. Yeah, I think certain load times may be nominally faster with an ODE, but by and large you're still restricted to the actual Sega Saturn CD-ROM controller in there, so for the most part, initial load times are still roughly as fast or slow as original hardware. And while it seems to be optimized for the Saturn Redump project in terms of disk image formatting, it supports standard ISO, bin/Q, clone CD image files, and a handful of others, which, yeah, I've had no problems loading any images in those formats. It just straight up works with games from any region. No having to mess around with action replays for imports like I did on my other Saturns, so that's nice. You would still need to add a 50/60 Hz mod if you'd like to change the way the games display and PAL regions and such. That's not something the Fenrir provides. But yeah, for me with this NTSC JV Saturn, I'm quite happy with the results so far. As happy as I can be with this fascinating lobotomy port of Duke 3D. And by fascinating, I mean I don't like it. Never have. It uses the Power Slave engine also used in their port of Quake, and I've just never been a fan. The lighting is cool, but the wibbly-wobbly turning makes me feel queasy, and the scale of everything is off. It's all too tall, and Duke feels like he's been cut in half.
Why am I 3 feet tall here?
Alright, so, moving on to a fighting game, and while a Virtual Fighter title would be obvious, I asked the LGR Twitter what games they'd prefer to see, and Fighters Megamix came up time and time again, so hey, why not? I've actually never played this one, despite owning a copy, but I picked it up because I knew the roster is pretty absurd, combining characters from Virtua Fighter, Fighting Vipers, Sonic the Fighters, Virtua Fighter Kids, Virtua Cop, and even Daytona USA. Yeah, you can play as the car from Daytona, providing you unlock it, that is. The same with the other sillier choices. Sadly, there's not much absurdity to choose from on first boot, but oh well. And yeah, this is actually running at 60 FPS, but you're only seeing 30 here. I had to adjust my camera to get around the rolling line problem filming at 60, since the game's vertical refresh rates actually tend to run just a bit below, like 59.85 or something. But yeah, in person, it's smooth as smooth things. Alright, so next up was another one y'all recommended over and over, Astal, or Astal. I'm not sure, I've never played this one either. I actually didn't even realize this was a side-scrolling platformer. It's just one of those I picked up thrifting many years ago, since the artwork looked intriguing. Just beautiful 2D art. I love the copious foreground and background things going by. Parallax is nuts. I didn't quite play it long enough to get the gist of what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'll absolutely be revisiting this since I love the aesthetic. Next, I attempted to load up the wonderful X-Men vs. Street Fighter, forgetting entirely that it asks for 4MB RAM expansion to begin, which I absolutely own a couple of them, but they're boxed up somewhere in storage since I haven't unpacked that stuff since moving recently, dang it. So next up in highly recommended games, we've got a JRPG, or at least that was my incorrect assumption. This is Dragon Force, which starts up with a lovely FMV sequence, one that I don't think would be improved by the VCD MPEG expansion like some games were. Not that I have one, but anyway. As for the game itself, well, it sure looked like an RPG at first with all the text and overall presentation, but not really. Turns out this is sort of a strategy tactics thing with a dash of role-playing sauce on the side. Again, I'm intrigued enough to return to this in the future, but I'll have to spend a lot more time with it to really get into the game. One that I know very well, though, and is just an absolute must anytime you have a Saturn going, Panzer Dragoon. An absolute classic that I always feel compelled to pick up and play if it happens to be running on any system nearby. Though amusingly, I've barely played the Saturn version. This is one that I've primarily played on PC under Windows 95, since Sega gave it a pretty excellent port in the 90s, and since I have a Diamond Edge 3D card that lets you play using real Saturn controllers plugged into your computer, it's a pretty authentic Saturn-like experience even on PC. So playing on the real thing here feels just as it should. Okay, so another one I had to test, although I don't think anyone recommended it, Overdriven GTR, a special Nissan edition of the original Road and Track presents The Need for Speed, but released only in Japan, featuring a completely different selection of cars, all classic Nissans and generations of Skylines. One of those I've covered a time or two in my History of Need for Speed retrospectives. In fact, I believe this was the first Saturn game I ever imported for just one of those videos, like 12 years ago now. Ugh. What a phenomenal selection of cars here, though. It's just so cool seeing a reskinned Need for Speed like this. Considering how much I played the original on the PC back in the day, it's always wild to experience. There's also Skyline Memorial on the PlayStation, and that's worth playing too for the different car selection and other slight differences compared to GTR here, but yeah, either way, it's neat to see. They put some real effort into overhauling Overdriven as a celebration of Nissan sports car history, even if the car models and complete lack of traffic leave a bit to be desired. So, another one that wasn't recommended by anyone, but I have to play since it had such an impact on me as a kid, Impact Racing. Those memories of looking at the rental case for this all cracked and beat up and taped back together, it was just the artwork, you know? Being obsessed with the Dodge Viper and the TV show Viper at the time, it really grabbed my attention and imagination. It was a Viper with laser miniguns coming out of the fog lights. How awesome was that? It highly inspired my first Kit Bash model car, actually, where I slapped a whole bunch of aircraft parts and random toy pieces onto a Viper RT-10 I'd put together. Again, having never even played Impact Racing, just looking at the screenshots on that beat-up box. The game must be amazing, right? I mean, it has its charms in that clunky mid-90s early 3D kind of way. Shoot other cars, drop mines, try not to run out of time or get blown up too much. It's an okay game. The tracks are just so narrow, though, and the gameplay is simplistic to the point of repetitive fatigue, setting in pretty soon. I have a lot of fondness for it anyway, mostly stemming from my own half-memories of looking at that cracked case at Farmore. Weird what sticks in your mind after 27 years. And finally, let's end on one that was both recommended by y'all and one that I played a lot myself back then. Sonic Racing, or Sonic R by good old Traveler's Tales. One that I got on PC pretty soon after it came out. I think I got it at Sam's Club. I played the crap out of it on Windows 95 with keyboard controls, and I remember it being frustrating, but, well, this is, it's not good in terms of handling. Maybe I just need to get used to the controller, but man, does this not feel responsive, like over and understeer at the same time somehow. Whatever though, I'm still rather fond of this game and have a lot of memories, both good and bad. Honestly, I loved exploring this game the most, not even racing. I mean, I wanted to unlock stuff, so I eventually did beat it, but still. I was really excited to have an actual 3D Sonic game, not just Sonic 3D Blast, which I played the crap out of that too at a friend's house, but anyway, yeah. I think it's obvious that even with things being wonkier and clunkier than I might recall, I'm still having a lot of fun going through my own Saturn library here. And I'm gonna start extending that now and playing more stuff I've never tried, cause, yeah, the Saturn has always been one of those systems that I've respected from afar, have messed around with in bits and pieces over the years, but never got too serious about exploring its library. So having this ODE going really is a great excuse to do so. And the V Saturn in particular, I don't know, I just think it looks cool with that two-tone gray going and the classic Victor logos and stuff. So thanks again to John for making the trade happen so we could check this out. I'm inspired to try some other ODEs for some of my other disc-based systems, especially the PS1 and the Dreamcast, but yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this laid-back look at the Saturn, a delightful console that always deserves some love. Do stick around for other LGR things that are always in the works, or check out some of my other previous episodes till then. And as usual, thank you for watching.